What are 3 keys for effective marketing? Welcome to Tea at Taxevity, where you get insights from insiders who make life better, our many clients and friends. I'm Pramod Sharma, the actuary at the Taxevity Insurance Advisory, and when I'm not doing interviews, I'm helping people transfer financial risks with life and health insurance. Our guest today is Rick Shea. Welcome, Rick.
Hi, Pramod. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too. It's been a while.
It has.
What do you do when you're not being interviewed?
Well, I'm an independent marketing consultant, and I help small to mid-sized companies measure their marketing so they can stop wasting money.
That's a terrific goal to have.
It is.
How did you get involved with the topic of effective marketing?
Well, it started from my initial focus around measuring marketing, and what I realized in doing that is there were a few things that tended to block my clients from being effective marketers.
Okay. And is there a key thing that got in the way?
Well, initially, it was about organizations who didn't do a good job of setting objectives.
Okay.
If a company doesn't set good objectives, it's very hard for me to measure anything.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so they need to be better at planning.
Okay. And what about customer behavior? Was that a concern too?
Oh, definitely. For my clients to make good marketing plans, they really have to understand their customers. So they need to research them and understand how to reach them.
Okay, and what sort of things should they find out about their customers?
Well, they want to understand their needs.
Okay.
Right? What do customers value? What problems are they trying to solve?
Okay, and then probably things like, how do you find another customer like this customer?
Exactly. And so really the focus ends up being on something I talk about a lot, which is profitable customer behavior.
Okay.
And that is, well, I'll give you an example. If you're a company that manufactures or produces things, ideally you would have all your customers come to you on the first day of the year and say, here are my needs for the entire year, and pay for it all up front.
That would be ideal, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And also pay at your asking price.
Yes, exactly. No negotiating at all. Right? Then you could schedule everything, buy all your inventories, plan your staffing, and it would be very profitable for you.
Right.
The other extreme would be customers who come to you at the last minute with outrageous demands, complex orders, things that cost you money.
But maybe they're more profitable because you can charge them more.
Possibly, but it's a hard way to run a business.
Okay,
right?
that's a good point.
You just can't plan anything.
And then your staff are not going to be very happy.
Exactly.
Guess who's staying here all night?
Exactly. And what tends to happen too, when you have customers like that come to you with last minute demands, you might end up having to treat one of your better customers who behaves properly very poorly because you're trying to accommodate a last minute request.
Oh, that's a good point, the squeaky wheel.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. So for an organization, your goal is to figure out what profitable customer behavior looks like, and then develop marketing plans to go out and find as many of them as possible and bring them in and serve them as best you can.
Okay, and what are 3 keys to effective marketing?
Well, planning, customer research, and measurement.
Okay, let's explore each of them, but let's start with customer research if you don't mind.
Okay.
What's your message there?
Well, I guess I'll give you an example of a project that I've just done for a client of mine to show you how valuable good customer research can be. My client came to me with some revenue problems, both short-term and long-term, and a marketplace that's changing rapidly. So we concluded the best way to address this was to go out and talk to their customers, talk to their high-value customers, their best customers, and find out what's happening in their world and what are their needs, how are their needs changing.
And how did you get this information? What was the process?
I set up interviews with the right people.
Okay.
And in research, it's very important to ask the right people the right questions. Otherwise, you'll go in the wrong direction. You have to ask the questions the right way. So it's a very tricky thing to do well, but important to do well. And so I interviewed all these customers using the same scripted questions each time for consistency, and then sat down with all of my data, all of my sort of soft data from the interviews, and worked through it and was able to identify 2 short-term opportunities that my client can implement right away without having to develop anything new, and then 2 potentially transformative new products that they can bring to market in the coming year or 2.
That's excellent.
So, but they wouldn't have found that if they didn't send me in there to talk to their customers. So it's really important. I always say, talk to your customers.
Okay, I understand the idea behind customer research, and it makes sense. But there's also another school of thought. So for instance, if you look at these interviews, we didn't do any customer research to see if anyone would watch, but thank goodness they are. But if you look at a bigger example, say the iPad, Steve Jobs is famous for not doing research. He would basically invent stuff, and like with his team, and then they would launch it. At the time the iPad was launched, there was a lot of skepticism whether it would succeed or not. That seems to be another extreme.
Yeah. Well, you might say he was a great visionary, and I think that's true, but a lot of that vision comes from a real deep understanding of his customer gained over the years.
Okay, actually you're right, because he was inventing it to sell.
Yeah.
And it's not that he was just inventing something for his own benefit. The second element is strategic planning. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I think the point to make there is I often see, I often have clients who come to me and they reach a conclusion that they need to do a certain marketing program.
Okay.
And whether it's they need to have a print ad, or they need a new brochure, or they need to have a social media presence, and they skip an important step around the plan. It's important to be very strategic about how you arrive at those decisions, and to go through a process where part of it can be talking to your customers, part of it is understanding your competitive environment, having a very clearly differentiated offering that resonates with your customers, with your target customer segments, in ways that they see the value and they're prepared to pay a little bit more perhaps. It's understanding the messages that you need to send out there to attract the ideal customers who will behave in the way that you want them to, in that profitable customer behavior. Maybe it's about designing marketing programs and promotions and incentives that will attract those types of customers and incent them to buy in the way you want them to buy. So if you're very strategic about going through all those steps and asking yourself the right questions, and you will arrive at, okay, these are the types of programs that we should be running, targeting these customers, through reaching them through these channels with these clearly defined objectives.
Okay, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I'm assuming that a lot of marketers would know these basic steps, but there must be things that go wrong if they're not following them.
Well, as I said, they sometimes skip that step, or they take shortcuts. And I think part of that is just the reality that so many people and organizations live with, which is a lot of deadlines that are coming at them real fast, being short-staffed, not having the resources they would like to just get through every day with. And planning's not easy, right?
It's not
hard
even
work,
very enjoyable.
and it's not much fun. So it can be helpful to have a process to follow. I've templated an approach to make it easier. Sometimes if you start with a blank screen or a blank sheet of paper, it's hard to know that you're taking the right steps to put a plan together.
Yes, and then you might not, you could easily skip steps. If you have a process, then that makes it that much easier.
Exactly.
And the last element is measurement.
Yes. Yes, very near and dear to my heart. I think it's really important. As I said, it was sort of the initial focus to my business. With properly set objectives, then I take the approach, let's measure results versus objectives.
Okay.
And see if the marketing programs we plan to run are having the desired effect.
Okay, and again, that seems like a relatively obvious thing comparing those two things. But I gather there are things that go wrong in that process too.
Mm-hmm. Um, Aside from not setting good objectives, the other thing that goes wrong is, well, actually, there's two things. One is I think a lot of organizations focus on trying to measure financial return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
And I take the position that that is just too hard to do. For most, especially small to mid-sized organizations who don't have huge budgets, it's not worth doing. You would end up needing to throw too much money relative to the size of your marketing budget at measuring financial return on investment.
So you're saying that, say for instance, if they do a Twitter campaign or an ad campaign, that would be hard to measure an ROI from?
Because there's too many things that go on that impact the consumer or customer's purchase decision. You know, I'll use an example.
Sure.
I was sitting with a friend of mine that I hadn't seen for a while. We're catching up, having a beer. I'm telling him about my measurement work that I do. And he said, "Oh, I get it. You must measure financial return on investment."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, no, I can't. It's too hard. And here's why. Here's an example. And I held up my bottle of Corona that I happened to be drinking that night.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I can't tell you which marketing program caused me to try Corona for the first time. I don't know why. It's one of the half dozen or so brands that I tend to order. And I don't know why I bought it tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember various marketing programs I've seen over the years. You know, a couple sitting on the beach and a girl in a bikini walks by and the wife squirts the husband with the little piece of lime because he's looking at her instead of paying attention to the woman he should be paying attention to.
So that's something you can remember?
I can remember that.
Okay.
Is that why I buy Corona? I have no idea. And I can remember many other promotional campaigns that I've seen. If Molson Coors makes 50 cents on that one bottle of beer and they wanted to allocate the profit to the different marketing messages that I've seen over the years that somehow accumulate in me and trigger a purchase every now and then, I have no idea how to do it for my own purchase. And perhaps your math would be different and the next person's math would be different on, you know, how we make those decisions. So for a marketer to aggregate all their consumers' purchase decisions and try to figure out how to allocate profit to programs, I just think it's too big of a mess.
Mm-hmm. We like the idea of A leads to B, but
Yeah.
life isn't that simple.
It's not. We aren't simple. We're very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So our purchase decisions are messy too.
Right. Each marketing campaign is different. How can you compare them?
That's the other really important point here. Each campaign would be perhaps targeting different consumers, using a different method of communication. You might have different objectives. You might use different analytics tools to gather the different key performance indicators about that program. And you end up with silos of data for program A versus B versus C and so on that are each different. And so you have an apples to oranges to bananas to mangoes to whatever comparison that you can't make. And remember, as the owner of a marketing budget, your responsibility is to figure out the most effective way to spend it. To do that, if you spend it in a number of different ways, if you're sitting back at the end of the year looking back at the 10 things you did, your job is to rank them.
Yes, and do more of the things that worked and stop doing the other ones.
Exactly. So to rank them, then you need one methodology that you can apply consistently to each program when you measure it. That will give you a common metric that you can then use to rank them.
Can you give us an example?
Well, what I do is I use a scorecard, and I include on the scorecard many different metrics. Some of them are corporate in nature, your profit objectives or your revenue objectives for that brand. But then at the program level, now we're looking at, you know, who are we targeting? What did we want them to do? Are we trying to get them to subscribe to something or register for something or or are we trying to generate a lead for a sales call or a presentation? And you're looking at all of these different metrics that are all part of how you define success for that program. And I weight them, I score them, I add them all up, and I get a score for each program. And each program has its own score. And that's the common metric I use.
Okay, I'm glad you explained that, because I was getting a little confused about how you did things. So you really do a lot of measurement, and then you come up with the metric that can be compared, even though each program itself is quite different.
Exactly. So
okay.
it's that score I come up with is really a substitute for a financial ROI calculation. That would be the thing you'd love to do if you could. Mm-hmm. But since you can't, or since that would be so complicated or so costly, this is an appropriate way to come up with the same information you need to make a good decision. This is all about supporting good decision making, which is what should I do more of and what should I do less of.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like you have a different scorecard for each marketing campaign.
That's right. It starts with one standard template that then is customized for each program.
What's your key message for the people watching today?
Well, it's to remember that focus on profitable customer behavior and the importance in defining what your ideal customer is and what that behavior that you want is. And then from that, go out and talk to your customers. It's really important to understand what they need, to find out what messages are going to resonate with them, and to know how to find them. Take those insights, feed that into your strategic planning process, set good objectives, and then measure. Because with measurement, you'll learn if what you're doing and if all those decisions you made are good, and if you're having the desired outcomes from your programs.
Mm-hmm. I remember a quote, I forget who said it. What matters gets measured, what gets measured gets done.
Exactly.
What's the best way for people to reach you?
Well, they can try my website, which is Optiv8, OPTIV8.com, or maybe send me an email at rick@optiv8.com.
Thanks for dropping by.
Thanks, Pramod. Good to see you.
Thanks for joining us for Tea at Taxevity. The Taxevity Insurance Advisory helps you understand insurance and bridges gaps in your coverage. There's no premium for peace of mind. How healthy is your insurance?